All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we will look at last night's slate a little bit, and then we'll also look at today's slate and just pregame strategize what we're trying to do here. I was questionable on the last night's slate piece because I wasn't able to get the 100K winning lineup for last night, but I did want to shout out and celebrate my guy uh, M Black 412, who won just a measly 33,000 grand last night. Awesome job last night, man. Let's look at the lineup you had. 373 was a really strong score. James Harden was a core play for us, so that went well. Oh, for myself, on Wednesdays I go out. I wasn't able to late swap, and so I had a crap ton of Jordan. So personally, I did not do well. But I like seeing a lot of people celebrate and do very well last night. We had a lot of people post screenshots in the Discord last night, so congrats to everyone there. In Black, AO. I don't remember if we ended up being under the field or over the field on AO. I remember him showing up. I don't think I did anything to him, though, to force him in. That was like a domination station play. Jimmy Butler was a B-dub Brandon leverage play yesterday. He mentioned him on the pre-lock show, and he crushed. Miles Bridges made it. We did force exposure to most of Charlotte last night, so glad that worked out. Holmes, I know people were talking about him in the Discord. Upper Slad and Brandon B-dubs mentioned him in the Discord last night, I believe. Dyson Daniels, I didn't play, but glad he worked out for you. Aaron Gordon, we did force exposure to last night. SGA, we also forced exposure to. So, all in all, congrats. Love seeing members have awesome takedowns, and congrats to everyone else who did well. Zolo, we were just talking. Good to see you, man. Agreed. This is an interesting 4-game slate where there's some interesting pieces here. Starting off, we have the highest game total on the slate. Per usual, I am going to force exposure to this game if need be. Ideally, they'll show up naturally, but just the way things are looking, I'm going to have to force exposure to these guys. Let me make one change right quick. I accidentally made this a private show. Let's make it public. Okay, we should be good now. All right, so looking at the Lakers again, this is a game I want to target. Per usual, we have no clue who's going to play for the Lakers, with both Anthony Davis and LeBron James both listed as questionable. Ideally, they'll both play, but they have actually been getting ruled out a bit more here recently. So if one of them end up not playing tonight, obviously that's going to dramatically change what we're doing with the Lakers. But assuming they both play, I'm just going to act like that for now. The spread is pretty wide here. We're expecting the Celtics to do pretty well against the Lakers, and I think that's pretty spot on. Lakers haven't been that great this season. I definitely want exposure to LeBron James at 2% ownership and the highest game total on the slate. I'm going to play that every single time. This game is also on national television, I believe. Don't care that much about that, to be honest, but it does help the LeBron narrative a little bit. So if he's going to be 2% owned, I'll have at least 5%. Anthony Davis has a fantastic matchup against Porzingis, and he's only 15% owned, which for me is too low on this slate for a guy like AD. I can't, because we'll have to see what else happens on this slate. I can't guarantee he'll be a leverage play, but I will at least be at field weight exposure. Potentially, he'll be a leverage play for me tonight. And then outside of that, the rest of the Lakers are in good spots too. I might have to force exposure here because they're not projecting super high for me right now. But guys like D'Angelo Russell, I definitely want exposure to. Austin Reeves and the rest of the Lakers become more viable if LeBron or AD actually end up sitting out. But D'Lo is someone I do want exposure to. The matchup itself against the Celtics isn't my favorite, but it's actually pretty neutral from a fantasy points allowed standpoint. They've allowed the 16th most points in the NBA, so pretty much extremely neutral there. So I'm not afraid of the matchup by any means. So yeah, I like the Lakers. No surprise. Zolo, I know you like the Celtics a lot. I like them too. The one concern I have here is just their balanced ownership. And so there's not really any Celtic that's not singing ownership. So it's going to be hard for me to get leverage on any of these guys. but I do plan on at least matching the field here. We know the Lakers have struggled defensively this season, just across the board. So matchups there, high game totals there, pretty much everything that I'm looking for. My problem is that there's not one player who is extremely obvious for me. From an injury news standpoint, Al Horford was not on the injury report, so we're expecting him to be available as of right now. Cornette is questionable. None of that matters too much to me at this point. But my plan, as you can see, I have a like on Jason Tatum, like on Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, Derek White, Holiday. Whoever isn't showing up for me in my runs, I'll make sure I'll make sure I force them to be close to at least the projected ownership column. So I like the Celtics tonight. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Thomas, hope you're doing all right. Zolo said, Drew and Tatum playing against their favorite team growing up. True. And then let's see. I think that's it. I saw this really sad post about Tatum wishing he got more advice from Kobe when he was alive. So that was interesting to see. That was just a random thing that popped into my head when I was just online the other night. So yeah, that definitely goes back to favorite team growing up and all of that. So next up, we have the Pacers going up against the Knicks. Close spread, decent total. My problem here is that they're the Pacers, and this team is filled with streaky players. Tyrese Halliburton is expecting to play. We're also expecting him to still be on that pretty hardcore minutes limit. He did have an interview where he talked about wanting to play today and in the next game against the Kings, just because he wants to show the medical staff that he's pretty healthy. And hopefully then that minutes restriction will come off for him. But for now, we're not expecting him to see too much run where he can really pay off his price tag. So more of a wait and see approach. Mathurin is questionable. Jalen Smith is questionable. TJ McConnell is questionable. None of that stuff by itself matters for me, but it does still help a good bit to guys like Nesmith and Turner if those guys miss. Nesmith and Turner are also really the only guys I'm looking at for the Pacers. I don't trust Nesmith or Turner. These guys won't be core plays for me, but they're priced appropriately for their recent production. And that's pretty much it. The Knicks in general aren't a team I like to pick on too much. But again, if I get a little bit of Nesmith, if I get a little bit of Turner, just because of their price tag, they make some things work on this slate. Anthony said, Josiah Harden and Kawhi got me to the cash. Nice, man. Congrats. Glad that went well. Zolo, yeah, Tatum was a huge Kobe fan. Wish we would have drafted him over Ingram. It all kind of worked out, though. You know, you're still able to get a championship run. Are we running it back with Nesmith? I am. I mean, I'm planning on being around field weight. I'm not going crazy here, but because we know how easy it is for him to do absolutely nothing. But I plan on being at least around field weight. It is an Obi Toppin revenge game, but I think they hate Obi, to be honest. He's not someone I'm looking to play here. So yeah, just Turner or Nesmith for me. For the Knicks, I like this side of the ball a bit more, but there are some questionable tags that will impact things for me. OG Anunoby is questionable. Quentin Grimes is questionable. Those two plays in their injury status will impact things for me just because their coach has been running them into the ground in regards to minutes. And when OG is out, that really just solidifies that the starters are going to see a lot of run. And so I love it when teams do that. I'm sure the players hate that, but it's great for us. It just really gives us that consistency that we're looking for that we don't typically see in DFS. Now, that being said, if Grimes and OG play today, then I'm still planning on playing the Knicks. They're priced cheap enough where they still have upside with Randall out, but he's someone that is just, it just makes a lot of these plays a little bit more unstable. So like Dante DiVincenzo, for instance, still a good play if OG plays, but he's a little bit more risky. And I would probably still have him as a core play, but I wouldn't feel as strongly about it if OG's out. So it's just kind of a change in mindset, not necessarily a change in how I'm going to play it, unless something else becomes more obvious later. Zola said, do you think Brunson's going over projected? That's a good question. Let's look a little bit closer at it. Right now we have him, let me take this like off, at 56. I think that's pretty close to where the rest of the industry has him. So it's aligned from just like an industry perspective. But for me personally, having him at 56, going up against the Pacers. Let me look a little bit closer at the matchup. It's pretty neutral. So it's not a plus spot, but it's a plus in pace for him going up against the Pacers. So that's nice. And then also, Sim Model likes Brunson a good bit too. So the number itself could be a little high, but I like that it's high just because it's going to make sure he shows up in my lines tonight. He is one of the 9K players plus that I'm looking to prioritize here. So there's other viable options, and his high ownership always speaks to potentially fading. Like if you want to pivot off of Brunson, there's a ton of realistic options. We talked about Tatum, Brown. There's some of the Sixers available. So there's definitely other guys that in some of my lines I want to pivot off of Brunson. But for the most part, I plan on eating the chalk because I like the spot tonight. Good question, though. Power said, I like Okoro off the bench while Garland and Mobley are still restricted. I don't hate it. Better spend up is Tatum, Maxey, Mitchell, or Harris. We have to wait and see for Maxey, but I do like a lot of those plays that you mentioned there. But for now, in some of my early runs, I've been able to get close to field weight on Brunson and still get exposure to Tatum, Maxey, Mitchell, and whoever else I want to get exposure to. So when I'm able to do that, that's what I try to do, is just match field weight. And if there's an obvious leverage play that I really like, then I'll go heavy on that. As of right now, there's not one of those. And so for me, I don't have one of those. And so until that presents itself or something starts to stand out, I don't overthink it. So yeah, I like Brunson. DiVincenzo's in a really good spot. Better spot if OG is out. OG is viable, but not a must play by any means if he ends up playing tonight. He's been out for a little bit. So I do have some worries about minutes, but there weren't too many restrictions on Isaiah returning. So not overly nervous about that. Josh Hart is in a really good spot. Again, better play if OG gets ruled out. Precious isn't on anyone's radar. He's not on mine either, but he is a viable play at 5,800 if OG gets ruled out. Josh Hart also a much better play if Quentin Grimes gets ruled out as well. But if everyone plays here, excitement level goes down, but I'll still have exposure to Brunson, DiVincenzo, and Hart at least. I like the 65 game rule just because NBA players take long stretches of not playing for so freaking long. It's annoying when there's guys like Halliburton and Embiid who deserve awards but are now at risk of not getting them. But I think it's fair game. If you're able to outlast, then you deserve the award because of that, because you're able to power through every day. In my opinion. Zola said, I asked because Brunson hasn't hit 50K in the last 2 games without OG and Randall in better matchups with the Hornets and Jazz. Good. Yeah, I mean, I think those are great points, and you're right. The one thing I would say about the Hornets, bad matchup, but slower pace game. Jazz, you're right. Just good matchup overall for Brunson, and he had a decent game there, but he still didn't see more than 50 points. But I think that's a valid concern. But definitely fadeable for sure. But I'll be field weight exposure. But with that being said, if we get to the pre-lock show and I have my men's on the guys I like more and Brunson exposure starts to go down, which we see happen quite often for me, then it is what it is, you know. I am always going to prioritize my leverage plays over anything else. Next up, potential leverage plays will come from this Cavs game. For the Cavs, it looks like we have no real injury news. Garland's back, Mobley's back. We've seen some restrictions on minutes there. Never know how long that's going to last for. With that being said, Donovan Mitchell's price tag is starting to get a little outrageous. He's close to 10K, but he does see the Memphis Grizzlies today, who are still missing so many people. Ultimately, for me, this is more of a sim model play than anything. The sim model still really likes Donovan Mitchell, even at this price tag. And that's one of those things where when there's a stud who has a nice sim model percentage in comparison to the other people in their price range, I play it even if I don't fully understand it. So I'll be at least around field weight there. Jared Allen, I'm getting off of that train. I haven't liked him since Mobley's been back, and I still don't like him now. I did end up playing him last time around, but I didn't want to. The one thing I will call out, though, is that the Memphis Grizzlies are giving up the 5th most points to post bigs like Jared Allen. So there is definitely still an argument there for this being a really soft matchup. For me personally, I just don't like an 8K Jared Allen in general, but I also don't like it when he's playing next to Mobley. His price range should start to go down here soon, in my opinion. For the Grizzlies, a team I absolutely hate seeing on slate, but they're starting to get a little bit clearer in regards to what they're doing from a rotation standpoint. Scottie Pippen Jr. has been their guy. They're prioritizing him over guys like Gilliard, which is, we knew Gilliard was the lower upside guy, so that makes sense. Ultimately, they did sign a few guys to some 10-day contracts, not overly concerned about that. But the reason why I don't love Memphis today is because they're going up against the Cavs, and the Cavs are a really good defense, and they're even better with Evan Mobley back. So no one stands out to me here. They're seeing decent ownership. I mean, if you want to take one-off shots on Jackson or Williams or Aldama, that's fine. Even like a GG or Scottie Pippen Jr., they're just not guys I'm looking to force exposure to. If they don't show up naturally, I'm not going to force it. All right, finally, we have a game that we can get a little bit more excited about. For the Sixers tonight, Joel Embiid is out. Thankfully, we already have that news. Marcus Morris is doubtful. We know that already. Nicholas Batum is questionable, and Tyrese Maxey is questionable. Those both matter a good bit for me. When Batum is out, that really just solidifies Kelly O's minutes. And then obviously, if Maxey's out, that impacts everybody on this team, and it makes them all much more viable because he is the guy who dominates usage with Embiid out. Tobias Harris at 7K, I'm playing no matter what. We've been on this train for a while now. Matchup against the Jazz is nothing to shy away from. Harris is at 37% ownership. I plan on being significantly over on that. My concern here is that if Maxey gets ruled out, Harris will be chalky for everybody. So might not be a ton of leverage there. Paul Reed is viable, but he's not someone that we have to worry about forcing in. Ideally, he'll show up for me around 20 to 30%. And then Kelly O is extremely viable here. Again, if Batum is out, I plan on forcing some exposure to Kelly O. If Maxey and Batum are out, Kelly O should become close to a core play for most people on the slate. So definitely a very interesting spot and just a team I like a lot tonight. And then we might be able to take some shots on some of the value options for the Sixers, but I don't have a strong lean there. So you like Aldama? Cavs allowing most DK points to power forward last 7 games. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with one-off shots on the 3 to 4 guys I mentioned there. Do you have a take on Matt Hurt or Taj Gibson? No, Power, I don't. They're not guys I'm trying to get to. But if they showed up, like honestly, I would strongly not see them, prefer to not see them show up. Reed goes for 53 tonight. I mean, against the Jazz, anything is possible. They are so bad. 53 feels a little strong. It wouldn't shock me if we see like a 30 to 40 point performance, which would get him in the nuts, which is what we're looking for, but would love to see 53. For the Jazz, another team that's standing out a lot for me on this slate. They're also seeing decent ownership. This is a team that most people are building around. The one thing I will always speak to is just that this Jazz team is very, very tough to predict. A lot of streaky players who have strong ceiling performances and then disappear the next game. So if you're going way too high on a certain Jazz player, I personally am not a fan of that. I'm trying to go a bit more balanced with the Jazz just because they're healthy and they play so many guys that it's hard for a lot of these guys to have consistent ceiling performances. But let's look a little bit closer at these matchups and just kind of see who stands out from that perspective. This is not a team to fade, but it is a team that you have to be wary about a little bit. Outside of the obvious, Lauri Markkanen is one of those guys that I always like getting exposure to on small slates because he can pretty easily break them if he gets going. Matchup against the Sixers is actually a pretty soft one for him. Sixers are ranked third in the league in regards to allowing a lot of the third most fantasy points to versatile forwards, and that's what Lauri Markkanen is. And so he's one of the guys at pretty low ownership I'm also looking at as a leverage play today. I think a lot of you guys are seeing some of the concern I have is just that there's a lot of guys who are in decent spots that are your pay up options who are all around 15% ownership. And for me to get true leverage on those guys, I would have to go 30, 40% ownership or exposure to them. And so there's just not enough. There's too many guys like that for me to get leverage on all of them. So the two ways I'm looking at it, and I'm going to play around with it, is getting leverage on one of two of the guys I really like and then just matching the field on the rest, or just matching the field on all of the guys I like and letting lines come together that way. Both can work. It just depends on which way the domination station will let me run it today. Yeah, the Sixers are just not a team to worry about from a defensive standpoint. With Embiid out first and then also Maxey leaving, if he doesn't play, will make it worse. The problem for the Jazz isn't the matchup, it's the Jazz themselves. That's the issue, for me at least. But Lauri Markkanen's someone that I'm looking at and I want to prioritize. Let's see. Colin Sexton's definitely viable at 6,600. He did just have a ceiling, like not a ceiling, but a 36-point performance where he paid off his price tag. Before that game, though, he played 23 minutes against Brooklyn, only had 16 fantasy points. But before that, he faced the Charlotte Hornets, and he did play a little bit more than he typically does, and he had that strong 54-point performance. Long story short, the upside's there. In a soft matchup, I want to play Sexton tonight. Probably will ideally be close to field weight. I'm okay with him becoming a core play if need be to get decent leverage, but not someone I want more than 70% of because of the streakiness. Collins, I'm not overly excited about. Jordan Clarkson, I feel like is going a little bit overlooked. He's been in bad form here lately. He's just been off. His shot has not been falling. He's had multiple just bad performances here lately. But the upside is still there. He still plays around 30 minutes coming off the bench. So I'm not overly concerned about minutes here. It's really just that he needs his shot to fall because he's been in bad form. So a guy like Clarkson at low-ish ownership for this team, I'm also looking at making sure I get exposure to tonight because of the good game environment there. And then let me see if the sim model likes him at all. Yep, sim model likes him as well, which makes me feel better about that play in general. Kessler, not overly excited about. Kelly O, not overly excited about. If they show up, that's fine. They have upside. Like everyone on this team has upside, but not focal points for me. I don't have to be around field weight on them. Similar story of Chris Dunn and Keontae George. If this game blows out, then those two become a bit more viable. But for me, they just make lines work. So I don't really want more than two of... Honestly, I don't really want more than one of like a Keontae George and a Chris Dunn, Kelly O in a lineup, but at most really two. And I might make that rule if that shows up too much for me. Yeah. Like One of the things in DFS that I hate the most is just weird rotations. And I'll put the Warriors in there, even though they've been a little bit more consistent. But I hate seeing that. But it is what it is. I like this slate. I think it's interesting. I'm hoping we get maybe some news from that Lakers game that will spice things up a little bit. But we'll see. Thoughts on Pritchard? Let me look a little bit closer at him. Pritchard, 3,600 isn't bad. You know, for me with Pritchard, I don't really consider him unless someone gets out. That's usually when he sees just a little bit more minutes and more consistency. So ultimately, I don't plan on going there. I'd rather play one of the cheaper Jazz guys just because those minutes are a bit more secured. But if someone ends up sitting, then I think Pritchard could be fine. He's seeing decent ownership today too, so could definitely do worse, but I don't love it personally. Why in the hell did DeAndre Jordan play at all? Didn't he play at all? Yeah, great question, Steven. Made absolutely no sense to me either, but at least they gave us the starting lineup ahead of time, so we found out before the game started, but that was kind of ridiculous. I would love to see an explanation for it, to be honest. But anyway, I appreciate you all. Look forward to seeing you all on the pre-lock show. If you're interested in seeing that, the link is in the description. Feel free to use promo code BOB for a 10% discount there. We'll be live at 5:30 for that show. And then I have another work event tomorrow, so I will not be around for either show. There's an off chance I might be able to make the pre-lock show tomorrow, but more likely than not, it won't be able to happen for me. Same here, Steven. It cost me as well, but that's because I went out, so I couldn't late swap, but I saw that coming. Daniel, what's up, man? Dave, also, yeah, if you all could hit the like, share, and subscribe button, that would be awesome. Peace out, guys. Good luck.